You check your bank balance today, maybe more than once. Right now, you could tell someone exactly how rich you are down to the last cent in seconds. No number exists next to a hunter's name 34,000 years ago. No bank, no coins, no house with anyone's name on a deed, no inheritance written on paper. Just bones, beads, and how much of other people's time already belonged to you before you'd earned any of it. And somewhere buried in the ground for over 30,000 years, one person turns out to be richer than almost anyone alive today. The strangest part? That person never worked a single day of their short life. This is Knock. His whole tribe measures wealth the same way, not by what you own. It's about what people owe each other and what they're willing to give for free. No currency here. No paper promises, no locked front doors, no safe hidden in the wall. Just meat, tools, skins, and time traded hand to hand, debt passed quietly from person to person year after year. Help someone through a hard winter, and they remember it for a long time. Feed someone's hungry children today, and one day, their grown children feed yours in return. Even here, in a world with almost nothing left over to own, some people still end up with far more than everyone else around them. And what archaeologists eventually found, half a world away from Knox Fire, would change how we think about rich forever. Nearly 34,000 years ago, near a river in what is now Russia, one family was buried like royalty. In 1955, quarry workers cutting into a hillside broke into a grave unlike anything ever found before from the Ice Age. A man, around 40 years old, lay wrapped from head to foot in nearly 3,000 carved mammoth ivory beads. 25 ivory armbands circled his arms alone, stacked one above the other. 12 fox canines, dyed deep red with ochre, hung across his chest like a metal urn for something. That alone would already make him one of the richest hunters ever discovered anywhere on Earth. But the grave lying right beside his was even stranger. Two children lay buried head to head, one around 10 years old, the other closer to 12. Between their two small bodies, over 10,000 carved ivory beads, more decoration than most kings in recorded history ever wore at once in their entire lives. 16 spears lay beside them, each carved from a single mammoth tusk. Straightening tusks by hand took a rare skill few adults ever fully mastered. One child's leg bones were unusually short and curved, likely unable to walk normally at all. The other's jaw had grown at a strange, painful-looking angle. Neither child had hunted a single animal in their life. Neither had traded, led a hunt, or fought for anything. They were only children, and yet here they were. Researchers estimate each single ivory bead took roughly 1 hour to carve, using nothing but stone tools, animal sinew, and enormous patience. 10,000 beads means something close to 10,000 hours of someone else's skilled, careful, deliberate labor. That's not one person's work. That's dozens of relatives over months or years. Drilling and polishing tiny beads by firelight for children too young to hunt. Imagine being born, and before you could even walk on your own 2 feet, a full decade of other human beings' effort already belonged entirely to you. That is what rich actually meant 34,000 years ago. Not what you built with your own 2 hands, but how much of other people's lives had already been quietly handed to you. In a 2018 study, anthropologist Trinkaus noticed something about these skeletons that unsettled a lot of old, comfortable assumptions. The children's burial wasn't just as rich as the grown man's lying beside them. Bead for bead, hour for hour, it was actually richer. Which means this kind of status wasn't earned through years of hunting, leading a group, or surviving hardship after hardship. It was simply inherited the moment a person happened to be born into the right family, in the right place. Somewhere, 34,000 years ago, a baby arrived already wealthier than everyone else in that entire valley, without ever lifting a finger. Many hunter-gatherer groups, studied by anthropologists today, are fiercely, almost aggressively equal. They mock anyone who boasts too loudly about a kill. They insist meat gets shared with the whole camp. No exceptions, no quiet hoarding allowed, ever. For decades, most researchers simply assumed the deep past worked exactly the same way, valley after valley, tribe after tribe. Sunghir broke that comfortable assumption wide open, almost overnight. In his 2014 book, The Power of Feasts, archaeologist Brian Hayden argues equal societies still hid a few ambitious people. He calls them aggrandizers. In good years, when food was plentiful, they threw huge feasts and gave away lavish gifts. Quietly, those gifts created debts that never really got fully repaid. Generosity, used carefully and repeatedly enough, slowly turned into something close to real, lasting power. Quick question. While we're here, if wealth back then wasn't money at all, what would you personally want to be rich in instead? Type it below. Knock is genuinely curious what you'd choose, given the chance. 15,000 years later, in what is now southwestern France, a young woman was buried with a very different kind of wealth entirely. 70 red deer canine teeth, each one carefully pierced and painted bright red, were sewn into an elaborate necklace around her neck. 70 teeth means roughly 63 individual deer had to die just to make that one single necklace. But red deer barely existed anywhere near the place where she actually lived and eventually died. Researchers Marion Van Haren and Francesco D'Erico traced those exact teeth back to herds living nearly 200 miles away in another region entirely. She wasn't necessarily the best hunter anywhere in her whole group. She was simply the best connected, plugged deep into a trade network most people around her would never once touch in their entire lifetime. In 2017, geneticist Martin Sikora tested ancient DNA pulled from the Sunghir burials, fully expecting to confirm they were one tight, close biological family. He found almost the exact opposite of that. None of the individuals tested turn out to be closely related to each other by blood at all, which means this wealth wasn't only passed down from parent to child, the way we might naturally assume it worked today. It came from something much bigger than blood, community, alliance, and simply belonging to the right group of people. In a world with absolutely no money, being somebody could matter even more than being someone's biological child. Step back for a second, and the whole picture starts to shift completely into focus. This wasn't one lucky, unusually rich burial sitting alone in the archaeological record. It looks like an entire hidden system repeating itself. A system where a child could be born rich without trying, and a woman could become rich just by knowing the right people far, far away from home. Inequality, it turns out, might not be some modern invention at all. It could be older than farming, older than metal tools, older than almost anything humans have ever deliberately built together. The very first rich kid in recorded human history was buried 34,000 years ago and never worked a single day of his short life on Earth. Ash, for what it's worth, has already started hoarding bones behind the fire pit, growling softly if anyone else gets too close. Some things, apparently, never really change, no matter how many thousand years quietly pass by overhead. You probably don't personally own 10,000 carved ivory beads sitting in a drawer somewhere, but you inherited plenty of things you never actually earned, either without ever noticing. A language you didn't invent from scratch, all on your own. A home you didn't build alone, brick by brick, board by board. A head start that someone else spent years of their own life quietly giving you, for free, before you could even say thank you. Rich, it turns out, has always meant roughly the same thing, across every age of history. How much of someone else's life gently, quietly became yours? So, who was the richest person on Earth 34,000 years ago? Not the strongest hunter standing in camp. Not the fiercest fighter in the whole valley, spear in hand. It was a child who never once lifted a spear in his life, and a woman who never had to travel a single mile herself. Same wealth, same wanting, same human, different world. If you had lived back then, would you have been the one wrapped in beads? Or the one carving them hour after hour by firelight for someone else? Tell not below. Next time, what actually happened when two tribes who had never met before came face to face for the very first time?